Friends, I'm excited to introduce to you, maybe for the first time, maybe again, Mary Kate Hipp. Mary Kate grew up in our church and last summer was here and was doing an internship and now is our middle school ministry coordinator, and we're so excited to have her on the team. MK was in youth group when I was a youth pastor, and so I'm super delighted to have her joining us. She always is up for shenanigans, and she has some shenanigans for the kids' sermon today, so MK, take it over.
Yeah. Kids, come forward. Adults that act like kids, you can come forward too. We're just going to gather around here. Come on. I saw a bunch of you. I know you're here. Wow. There they are. Hi. Okay. I have a question while you're still coming up. Raise your hand if you've ever been in a car before. Oh. Wow, all of us. Okay, then I have another question for you. If I'm driving and I want to turn, what do I have to turn? The wheel. Okay, so I have some fun little paper wheels for you. If you want to take one and pass it to your neighbor. And I thought the best way to get this message across was to play a little game, to have a little activity. So we're going to go for a drive. And congregation, I would love if all of you can participate. If you've ever seen in like a student section, they do the little roller coaster chant, we're kind of going to do the same thing. Okay, so we're going to take our wheel. Do y'all have one? Perfect. All right, we're going to take our wheel, and then we're going to strap in. We're going to practice first, okay? Then we're going to start our car. And then we're going to turn. So we're going to practice this. When I turn this way, you turn this way with your wheel, okay? Congregation, put your wheels out. Join in, okay? All right, ready? I think we're ready. I think we got the hang of it. So everybody, strap in. Start the car. Vroom. And we're going to go for a drive. Whoa! All around. Okay. Whoa. And we're stopped. Wow. Yeah, press the brake pedal, in case you're wondering. I was told I needed to press the brakes. It was a little too crazy. So what I'm trying to get at is that sometimes life is like driving a car, and it gets a little crazy. It gets a little confusing. You take a wrong turn. If you've ever been in the car with me, you've taken a lot of wrong turns. It's okay. But our song today is Jesus, Take the Wheel. Many of you probably guessed that by now. So even when life is crazy, even when you're driving this thing called life, you take some wrong turns. If Jesus is at the wheel, if Jesus is in control, Jesus is guiding you, you have nothing to be afraid of. In the crazy and in the calm, Jesus at the wheel, nothing to fear. So I'm going to ask Ashley and Austin to lead us in this song. And as they do, I want you to get up, wander around, pretend to drive. Go for it. Thank you. Wow. Okay, we'll work on our driving. We'll come back to this when we're 16. Feel free to drive back to your parents, and then we'll invite Aaron on up. Keep your wheel. Keep your wheel. Color your wheel.
Don't throw it, though. It's not a Frisbee. It's a driving. It's
I'm
a
sorry,
steering
Aaron.
wheel. Well, I don't know how to follow that, but we'll try. So today, we are continuing in our sermon series. If you've just joined us and you're like, why are we singing Carrie Underwood in church? I can explain, I promise. We have decided this summer to do a fun, kind of light, summery series. We know a lot of people travel in the summer. You might be here some weeks, gone some weeks. So this is the kind of series where you can do a one-off kind of thing, where every week we're taking a psalm and we're attaching it to a song we would recognize from the radio. And those psalms and songs have the same emotion and human experience at their center. Because really, at the end of the day, the Psalms, this book in the Bible that we usually read silently to ourselves in our heads, was intended to be a songbook. It was intended to give words to Christians and to Jewish believers in early Israel in order to worship God in the midst of real human experiences. And so today in Psalm 6 and in the song, Jesus Take the Wheel, we hear reflected the reality that our lives often and easily can feel out of control. And of course, there's all the cheesy Christian sayings. There's the bumper sticker that says, like, if Jesus is your co-pilot, switch seats and all those kinds of things, right? The question that Carrie Underwood's song provokes for us is the question of who really is in control? Who really has the wheel in our lives? Who are we trusting? Who is over all of the things that are happening in our lives, to us, and with those we love? And as I thought about that, and even watching the kids run around and drive their fake cars, it reminded me of a story that I think I've told the youth group here before, but I don't think I've ever shared with you grown-ups. It's one of my favorites. I was about 11 or so, 5th, 6th grade, somewhere in there, and I rode a dirt bike for the very first time. Now, you could probably look at me and be like, yeah, that guy shouldn't touch a motorcycle, right? And that's true. That is accurate. Even at 11, I also had no business touching a dirt bike. And I promise, this was before iPhone, when Apple was cool. I always wore that summer this Macintosh computer hat, a black hat with a little apple on it. Shouldn't touch a dirt bike, right? But my cousin, who is the other guy, he now fixes up trucks and has a shop and all that kind of stuff. He had a dirt bike even though he was 8, because he lived in New Hampshire and they're crazy. And so he lived on this cul-de-sac. It was this big circle, big cul-de-sac, and it had a little grass island in the middle. So we had a racetrack, and we decided we were going to do, his last name is Crockett, we're going to do the Crockett 500. And we had our supplies, we had a gas can, we had everything ready to go for the Crockett 500, and we were going to ride around that circle 500 times. And every time, every 10 laps, you had a pit stop, and you had to jump off the bike, and another person jumped on, and they kept going while you drank Mountain Dew and ate chips, because it was 1994. And as that was happening, we're going, and we're going, and we're going, and we're on lap 50 or 60. And you know how kids can be when you we're determined, we're going to do this, so into it, so committed. It's my turn. I'm in the pit stop, and Mark pulls up, parks the dirt bike, hops off. I jump on and hit the throttle like that. Now, here's what I didn't think through about dirt bikes, right? The gas pedal is up here, and so are the handlebars. And so I hit the gas so hard that the bike goes vroom, and now it's out in front of me on one wheel, and I'm running behind it like, Mark, what do I do? And the only thing I had control of in that moment was that I still had control of the handlebars. The problem was the bike was continuing to go fast because I still had control of the handlebars. And he's like, let go. And I'm like, I can't. And you see the problem? My desperation in this circumstance had me death gripping the very thing that was causing it to happen in the first place. And here is the spiritual insight of Carrie Underwood and Psalm 6. That a lot of times when life feels out of control, our response is not to go, somebody else help. It's to hold on even tighter. White knuckle our way through whatever it is we're dealing with. And often that response, to still hold on, just like my response to that dirt bike, actually makes the very things that we're dealing with worse. The more we control, the more out of control things become, the more we double down on being in control, and it's this vicious cycle by which we often end up harming ourselves and others. And the invitation we see in Psalm 6, the invitation we heard in Jesus Take the Wheel, is to turn that response around. To recognize when things are so far beyond our own ability to control them that we have to just let go and trust someone else to pilot the ship, to turn and steer, to choose the destination and choose the pace, to let go of our incessant, very normal, very human need to be in control. But we don't have control problems, right? Anybody here a control freak? Anybody married to a control freak? Anybody got a control freak for a mom or a dad? A brave of you children. Well done. That means your parents aren't really control freaks, or you'd have known better. Well, I do think, and we've talked about this before, that in our context, and this is not true of all of us, there's no perfect broad brush, but in general, the people that live in Upper Arlington and Dublin and Hilliard have usually had a life where they've made their choices. They've had their control, right down to the way we take care of our lawns and the neighborhoods and that kind of thing. I learned recently that if you live in Upper Arlington, where are my Upper Arlington people at? And your grass gets too high, your neighbors can call the cops. What? There's if you have an RV in your driveway for more than 2 days, your neighbors have legal recourse. We have a control problem, right? My neighbor's petunias look terrible. Who cares? I grew up in a town where a sofa out in the yard was fine. That was normal. I have no context for this, but that is the environment. It's the water we're swimming in, right? And I get to curate. I get to curate my life. And we've lived in a time with more control than ever. Spotify now has an AI that predicts what music I'm going to like and crafts custom playlists for me, right? And I can slightly tweak it and modify it and only listen to the songs I want to hear. No more listening to the radio and only hearing a good song every fifth song, right? I can curate, I can control so much of my life. And so we get wired, we get believing that we have to keep it all under control. And it can cause us to be unkind to ourselves, to be unkind to others in this constant effort to hold it together, to control the environment we're in, because it's not a predictable and controllable environment. We see this in Psalm 6, and I want you to reflect on the layers of things that cause us to feel like life is out of control. Take a look with me at Psalm 6. It's page 18 in your journals if you have it, or there's a pew Bible in front of you. In verses 1 through 3, you really hear a variety of kinds of things, kinds of ways in which David, who wrote this psalm, his life is out of control. Verse 1 says this, "Lord, do not rebuke me in your anger or discipline me in your wrath." Now, this causes many Bible commentators to think that everything described in this psalm is a repentance, that somehow David is seeing that his sickness, his illness, all the things he's dealing with are because of sin in his life. But I think instead what you see in this psalm is a variety. However, it's important for us to note, and I'm glad that David put it first, that so often we are dealing with life circumstances that we did actually create. Now, I want to be careful. There are times, and we'll get to that in just a second, where things happen for no reason. We live in a world broken by sin and sickness and death and all kinds of things we don't control. That's not our fault. We don't blame ourselves. It's not my sin that caused my grandmother to pass away recently, right? That's part of what happens in a broken, sin-soaked world. And yet, there are many things that I have made decisions. I have steered my own car, and now I'm hanging off of a cliff, hoping I don't fall over the edge, and it is my own doing. That's an important takeaway. Important to realize that our efforts for controlling our lives and our doubling down on those efforts when things seem chaotic often ignore the fact that we're in the position we're in so often because of our own sin, because of the things we have done. And in David's life, this is manifestly true. His greatest failure, his greatest time of grieving and sorrow that fills many of the Psalms of lament, many of the Psalms where he is crying out to God, it's a response to his own actions of abusing Bathsheba, murdering Uriah, and losing the child that came from all of that sin. He is sleeping in a bed that he has made, and he's weeping into the pillow, and he's reckoning with that it is his own doing. So the first thing that causes us to feel like we are out of control, like life is falling apart, is the consequence of our own actions. It is the sin in our lives, the wrong decisions that we make, those things that cause us to feel like we are drowning and often start actually with us, difficult as that can be. Have mercy on me, Lord, for I am faint. Heal me, Lord, for my bones are in agony, is verse 2. We get a reference to a physical malady. And now, like I said, we don't teach, the Bible does not say that sickness is the result of our sin. We live in a world where sickness happens, where death happens, where tragedy happens. The world has been broken and shattered by sin. And the perfection that God intended is not real, and it is not part of our lives. And so we deal with things that come at us from outside of us at the fault of no one else. And those things hurt our bodies. And if you read verse 3, they hurt our souls. My soul is in deep anguish. How long, Lord? How long? That was a lot of my prayer over the last week or so. I have several people in my life who I care about deeply. And they're just not doing great or have things going on in their own lives. And I'm carrying the weight of that and just feeling the depth of sorrow of, I love this person and I want something different for them and I can't do anything about it. Maybe you've got kids that are in a rebellious phase and you're just sort of beside yourself and don't know what to do with that. Maybe you've got aging parents and watching the process of the end of life is this thing that you can't control and you can't fix it and you hate it and you're deeply anguished. And it's not that anyone did anything wrong other than that sin has shattered our world and there are things in it, sorrows and sicknesses and circumstances that God did not intend but are now part of our lives. And then if you jump down to verse, I lost track of it. Verse 8, away from me, all you who do evil, for the Lord has heard my weeping. And then verse 10, all my enemies will be overcome. You hear the language of that out of controlness that does come from the sin of others. You have moments where other people are actively doing things to harm us. Somebody at work is just making our life miserable. A friend has betrayed us and we don't know what to do. Our life can get out of control when we wake up one morning and our life partner, our husband, our wife, a longtime boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever it is that you've had in your life goes, hey, I don't love you anymore. And I don't have any choice. I didn't do anything. They have just decided and it's done and now I'm broken. So think about the three different ways we see in Psalm 6, three different sources of this out of controlness. My own actions, the things that I have done, the things I've chosen, the sins in my life that have caused consequences that now I can't deal with. The brokenness in our world that leads to sickness and sadness and death, and the sins of others against me. Abuse, harm, betrayal, small petty things like lying or insults that add up to just feeling overwhelmed and overcome and weighed down and burdened. And when we think about that, when you kind of look at the scope of that, just how out of control things can really feel, it's different than the highly manicured, carefully curated life we try to live, right? So I want to give you three things I think we see in the text, three invitations of the gospel to people who are out of control and living a life that is out of control. And the first one is this: tell the truth. What I love about Psalm 6 is just how awkwardly vulnerable it is. I'm going to read to you a large section of it, and I want you to imagine if we sang this every week for the next 8 weeks, I bet you would start to be really uncomfortable. It's a level of vulnerability that if you had to say it and mean it, it would feel more self-pitying, it would feel more helpless, it would feel more out of control than most of us are comfortable allowing ourselves to be, because we have to fix it, we have to have the answers, we have to push the emotions down and have it all together. Listen to what it says. Lord, do not rebuke me in your anger or discipline me in your wrath. Have mercy on me, Lord, for I am faint. Heal me, Lord, for my bones are in agony. My soul is in deep anguish. How long, Lord, how long? Turn, Lord, and deliver me. Save me because of your unfailing love. Among the dead, no one proclaims your name. Who praises you from the grave? This is the part I think would really get to us. I am worn out from my groaning. All night long I flood my bed with weeping and drench my couch with tears. Now, there's like a Cleveland sports fan joke in there somewhere, but it violates the nature of what I'm trying to do here, but I just wanted you to know that I know. Okay, back to it. I am worn out from my groaning. All night long I flood my bed with weeping and drench my couch with tears. My eyes grow weak with sorrow, and they fail because of all my foes. I mean, just listen to the depth of that. It's become kind of common in millennial parlance to tell people to feel their feelings, to not do the thing where we just stay busy and push all the emotions down, but to take time to actually tell the truth. to ourselves, and then to God, and hopefully also to someone else. Here is all the stuff. Here are all the ways in which I've created a mess for myself. Here are all the ways in which the brokenness in the world is weighing me down and pushing on me. Here are the ways in which I'm being harmed by other people, and I just don't know what to do with any of it. And sometimes I think we don't even take the time to tell ourselves the truth about that stuff, to be honest enough with ourselves and kind enough to ourselves to go, man, this is incredibly hard. You're not okay. You don't have this under control, and of course you don't, because look at all that you're dealing with. And then to turn to the Lord and say the same thing. That's why he gave us the psalm. It is a song to be sung by his people to him, to express emotions he knows we need to express, and that left to our own devices, we may never get around to. Lord, look at all of the things I'm dealing with. Look at the weight of all of this. I don't even know where to begin. What do I do? We tell the truth to ourselves, we tell the truth to him, and then the scriptures tell us to bear one another's burdens. To have someone in your life, your small group, a trusted friend, a partner, whatever it might look like, but to be honest enough and open enough with them to say, hey, here's all the stuff I've got going on, and to let them be gracious and merciful enough to go, man, that's really, really hard, and I'm sorry. And then to feel the, of not doing the suburban pretending I have it all together move, but instead telling the truth. And with each of these, I want to also encourage you that it takes time. You're going to find if you read through the Psalms that David does this move over and over and over again. It's not like, all right, I got all the emotions out, now I'm done, now back to getting things accomplished, right? We may have to over and over tell ourselves the truth, tell God the truth, tell others the truth, to really process and let out all of the stuff that we are really dealing with. And when we don't do that, I'm convinced it gives the enemy a foothold. Because we've got wounds and hurts and hang-ups and all kinds of things that we're not actually paying attention to, not actually dealing with, that become a tool in the hand of the enemy. So we tell the truth, and it might take some time, but we tell the truth. The second thing I want to point to is what Carrie Underwood sings, to turn it over. Tell the truth. Say, tell the truth. Say, turn it over. We turn it over. I think the limitation to the kind of just self-help notions that are similar to tell the truth, like feel your feelings, share with somebody, talk about it, is, well, if there's not anybody who can actually deal with this stuff, then just drudging it all up is kind of pointless, other than maybe it gives me a temporary emotional peace. But here's the good news, friends. There is somebody who can deal with all the stuff. The Bible tells us to cast our anxieties on the Lord because he cares for us. But we also do it because he's the only one who's actually able to handle it. The Bible tells us to bear one another's burdens, and so we are to, in Christian community, support and listen to one another. But even sometimes we just do the thing where we vent. You know what I'm talking about? And you come home from work or whatever, and you call up a friend or you're talking to your spouse, and you're like, blah, 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 just like all of the stuff, which is kind of being like, this bag's heavy, here, hold it. And then they're like, what? Why did you give this to me? My wife has this tendency to read terrible articles about human tragedy and then be like, listen to this story I heard. I'm like, no, you can be sad. I don't also need to be sad. Why do you tell me these things? And it persists. She just needs me to hold on to it. Well, it's good to share these things with one another, but we can't handle each other's burdens. Not really. We can't bear each other's any more than we can bear our own, but God can bear them all. And so together we take them to the Lord. When you share with me in Christian community, it's not so that I can carry it on my own. It's so I can join you in handing it over. We turn these things over to the Lord. And again, it takes time. Because it's one thing, you all know this. It's one thing to say, God, I'm giving this to you. It's a whole other thing for your heart to get the message. It's like your brain is an internet age and your heart is still doing pigeons or something. Smoke signals. It takes a while, right? It takes time for that to get all the way down to our soul. The level of anguish and the level of crying out that we see in Psalm 6 does not come easy. And those moments where we really know and we feel it in our gut to the deepest part of ourselves, God, I cannot do this on my own, are seasons of deep and sweet dependence on the Lord. And what God wants for us is that depth of intimacy and relationship with him. And over and over and over again, as we sang in many of the songs already this morning, it is in those seasons of despair and lament where we finally can see that we can't be our own God, that we need a God who can be God for us, that we are drawn into intimate relationship with him. This too takes time. So we tell the truth and it takes time. We start turning it over and it takes time. Sometimes it'll take repetitions. We'll have to remind ourselves. We'll have to ask other people, hey, if you hear me starting to say things that sound like I'm trying to solve all my own stuff, remind me to turn it over to the Lord. So say, tell the truth. Turn it over. The last one I want to point out to you is trust in his goodness. But what I love about what David does in verses 4 and 5, especially verse 4, is he says, turn, Lord, and deliver me, right? He's turning it over. He's saying, God, I've got all this stuff. I don't know what to do with it. You're my only solution. And save me, not because I've earned it, not I deserve it, not I'm the king, I'm handsome, whatever the things are that David could have claimed. He says, save me because of your unfailing love. And then he jumped down to verse 8, 9, and 10. Away from me, all you who do evil, for the Lord has heard my weeping. I know he's good. I know he's listening. The Lord has heard my cry for mercy. The Lord accepts my prayer. All my enemies will be overwhelmed with shame and anguish. They will turn back and suddenly be put to shame. The confidence, the certainty in the goodness of God that he has allows him to claim things that he is still in. Everything is the same. He's sick and he's sad and his enemies are coming, and yet he can say, I know that God will prevail because he trusts in the goodness of God. When Jesus takes the wheel, when we tell the truth, we turn it over and trust him as the driver, it's hard. It's hard to not backseat drive on Jesus. Oh, Jesus, stop, like coming. Jesus, look out, turn left. It reminds me of the first time here at UALC we took students on the confirmation trip when not the first time the UALC took them, but my first trip when I first joined staff. I had the great idea to hire a bus driver because we had a whole bunch of kids. So I was like, okay, this is going to be great. The bus driver will know what to do. We're heading up to Apple Valley to a cabin on the lake, and it's kind of hard to find your way there. And there came a moment when I realized in the back of the bus, this bus driver has no idea where he's going. And he pulled down this lane that was like a dead end by a pond. I was like, this is like minute 13 of most horror films. This is not good. And so we got it solved and turned around. And there are times where when Jesus is driving, it's going to feel like that. Like, Jesus, this is not the neighborhood I was planning to drive through. Jesus, why are we on this road? Jesus, why are you driving so slow? This thing needs to happen faster. I need to get to where I'm going faster. But to trust in the goodness of God is to trust that the destination is good because the driver is good and that he will get you there. And now lots of people, I just was reading somebody I follow on Twitter, and an author I love, Esau McCauley, was sharing about, he's in this situation right now. And he said he's not going to share about the situation, like all the stuff, because he wants to just give glory to God. And what he said that I loved was, I've never had circumstances that lasted longer than the goodness of God. And somebody in the comments said, well, what about people that die? Well, Jesus died, and it turned out that the goodness of God was longer than that too. Even if our story that we're fighting through, even if the thing that is out of control is an illness that leads to death or the loss of a loved one, if the worst thing we can imagine happens, the driver is still at the wheel, the destination is still good because the driver's good. And so what we learn from Psalm 6, that might take time to get all the way down into the depths of our soul. The invitation of the gospel to us this morning is to recognize that life is more out of control than we almost ever admit to ourselves and certainly to anyone else. To learn, to practice, to pray over and over, to turn over those things rather than to white knuckle our way through, because usually we just make things worse. And then to ultimately trust in the goodness of the driver. And that last one is not in our power either. We can't muster up trust. Faith itself is a gift to us. And so I want to invite you this morning as we prepare to come to the table, maybe take some time in your journal there. If you need to tell the truth, if you need to just write down, here's all the stuff. Think about those 3 areas that bring chaos. Here's the stuff I've brought on myself. Here's the stuff that's just part of the broken world. Here's stuff that I'm experiencing because of other people's sin against me. Maybe you need to just pray turning it over. God, would you just take this? Would you just please give me the gift of taking these things and allow me to get out of the driver's seat? Maybe you need to pray for the faith to believe that God is there, that he is powerful, and that he is good, and see if God will provide. We're going to come to this table where Jesus gave his very life for us in order for us to move out of the driver's seat and allow him to be the one that guides the pace, the direction, the destination. Let's come together to the table and pray as we prepare. Father, I thank you that you do not leave us screaming, running behind the dirt bike of our lives, but that you come in order to rescue us from our own sin, wickedness, and brokenness, to rescue us from a world that is now soaked with sin and full of hurt, and yet that you promise will one day be restored and be made new. That you rescue us from doubting and fearing where it is that you are taking us. I pray, Lord, that you would work in us even this morning and then throughout this week to continue giving you all the glory, telling you all the problems, handing them over to you because you alone can handle them, and trusting in your goodness. I pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.